Henry had just arrived home from work, and he was in a very good mood. Actually, he was in more than a good mood. He was excited. Soon, he was going to be very rich. Not rich, but super rich. Anything, mega yachts, private jets, would be his for the asking. Exactly how all this was to play out, he had yet to decide, but the possibilities were limitless. He also patted himself on the back. In just a few minutes, he managed to commit the perfect crime that would dwarf any crime in the history of crime. He sat at his desk feeling very smug. Things had worked out exactly as he had planned. He lived in a quiet middle-income neighborhood. Some kind of movement caught his attention from out of his front picture window. He looked out and saw a police officer standing on the street looking back. A little sooner than I expected, he thought to himself. They were conducting a normal investigation. I've been practicing my innocent denials. This shouldn't take very long, he thought. But what he saw next changed everything. 3 police copters came into view from above, with a SWAT team ready to storm out as soon as they landed. The one policeman actually was waiting for a squad to climb out of a mobile command center that was parked down the street. He knew he was surrounded. That one unlikely possibility that would have exposed him wasn't that unlikely after all. Henry knew what it meant. It must have been the most dramatic emotional swing in history. In seconds, he went from going to be the richest man that ever lived to a convict that was never going to see the light of day. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out an ancient Smith & Wesson revolver. It was part of his collection. I hope the company stock goes to hell and my ex-wife collects nothing, were his last thoughts. Squish had just returned from a ceremony that celebrated the establishment of a new school of co-studies at the University of Millennia, as the ambassador at large representing the co-planet. Officially, this was a largely ceremonial position, where all he did was attend ceremonies. Unofficially, it was a way of gathering information as to the status of Earth's attitude toward Co. Since both planets practiced open-source data, the exchange of information was invaluable, and Co wanted their partnership secure. He used to be the actual ambassador from Co. He took on this position because he always enjoyed visiting Earth and Millennia. Plus, he never missed the chance to visit his close, trusted friends, Rick and Melanie. Rick was an important officer in the territorial government and a general in Space Command. His wife Melanie was the chief financial officer of Millennia Corporation. Together, they ruled the planet. Unlike Earth, there were no streets or roads anywhere. Everyone rode trolleys to get around, but the sidewalks were made very wide. This allowed for small carts for those who wanted to rent them. His cart was permanently leased by the consulate. "Take me home," Squish ordered. "Yes, Ambassador," it answered, and it bolted down the path. When he finally reached his quarters, he flopped down at his desk and activated his computer. His real job was CEO of Co Metals and Recycling, a very rich growing company. Although it was in the capable hands of Maury, his executive manager, he liked to keep up with its operations. When he was the ambassador to Earth, Squish used their advanced medical and computer technology to have sensors surgically implanted in his ears and left eye. They were networked to a powerful artificial intelligence computer implanted in the back of his skull named Agnes. It contained all the known information from every advanced planet. Agnes announced, "Squish, you have a message from Millie." His mood perked up. Millie was his adopted niece, and he always looked forward to hearing from her. Years ago, the company purchased a lead mine on Bell, a large advanced planet. His main contact was Paul, their top negotiator. Business on Bell was very much a family affair, and they became good friends. He grew particularly fond of his daughter, and they communicated regularly over the years. She was an ardent student of ancient Bell archaeology and had earned an advanced degree. She had left a message. Making direct interplanetary calls on Bell was prohibitively expensive. He opened it. "Uncle Squish, I know you're busy right now, but while doing some routine research, I have come across some disturbing information, and I need your help. No one here seems to take me seriously, but I keep coming up with more and more evidence. I was reading a little-known, very ancient textbook titled Guardians of Heaven. It was stored in a secret library of an ancient church. I am practically the only one on Bell who can read that dialect without the aid of a computer. Everyone relies too much on translation software. It was written 1,000 years ago by a religious sect that lived on a large, secluded island. They were a wealthy society due to an abundance of natural resources. It seems they managed to buy some space stations from someone and converted them into primitive warships. Every holy year, a scout ship is activated, and it performs a reconnaissance of all the planets in the constellation of angels. This is a group of stars where they believe their deities reside. If it finds anyone living there, it returns and dispatches the stations to destroy them. I did some research and found that on at least 3 occasions, the outposts on the planets had been attacked and decimated by some large battle stations. The attacks all occurred during the holy years. No one has ever found out who did it. Uncle Squish, the Earth colony Millennia is one of the planets in the constellation, and the holy year started last month. I saw on the news channel that a small, unidentified spacecraft was detected orbiting the planets of the constellation and disappeared into FTL. They managed to get a picture of the small ship. She included an image of the cover of an ancient textbook with the picture of the craft inserted in the bottom corner. You can see that the ship on the cover and the ship are very similar. The sect died out 1,000 years ago, and very little information about them has survived. But it is known that they were obsessed with their religion, very secretive, extremely wealthy, and certainly had access to the technology to wield such spacecraft. Uncle Squish, I'm afraid Millennia is in grave danger, and they don't have much time. Thank you for listening, and say hello to Aunt Maury. Squish returned the message, thanked her, and promised to get right on it. This is disturbing, he whispered to himself. Agnes, call Rick. Yes, calling. What's up, Squish? He answered. Hi, Rick. Got some strange news for you. Squish explained the situation and forwarded Millie's message and image. He waited while Rick listened to it. Your niece is almost certainly onto something, Rick surmised. It makes sense. We had tracked the small ship she mentioned, and it was definitely on a recon mission. Okay. I'll initiate a staff recall and get back with you. Later that day, Jake Lee had just completed his last contract on Millennia and was walking out the door of the office building. Jake was a programmer, but not just any code pumper. He was a patcher. Patchers specialized in modifying existing programs. Software that has been excessively modified becomes glitchy, and he patched them back to health. And other times, companies just wanted their systems properly modified with new functions without becoming unstable. This job didn't pay as much as he was accustomed to, but when he was offered the chance to travel to Millennia, a colony planet, he jumped on it. He had always wanted to travel into space. When he got here, the leisurely pace and overly friendly lifestyle induced a strange culture shock. This place is just too laid back, he thought. Besides, there were 3 single men to 2 single women, and that was not acceptable. There was plenty of work here, and he could have stayed as long as he wanted to, but he had seen everything that was to see here, and he wanted to go home. In addition, his round-trip ticket had scheduled him to return in 3 days. Hotel rooms were extremely expensive and very stark, so he decided to find an out-of-the-way corner to spend the nights. This was not uncommon on Millennia. The locals called them loafers. The entire city was indoors and climate-controlled, so he didn't have to worry about the weather. The cafeterias were free, there were public gymnasiums with showers, and the parks were beautiful with many places one could sleep. He found a dark, secluded, grassy area and laid down using a teddy bear he purchased for his niece as a pillow. He was just about to fall asleep when someone flashed a light onto his face and asked, "Mr. Lee?" It startled him. He assumed he was busted by some security guard. The man turned off his light and said, "Sorry to bother you, but a very serious situation has popped up and we need your help." Jake regained his vision and could see a tall Air Force officer standing there in his dress uniform. The wings and insignia on his uniform indicated that he was a pilot and a captain. Jake had never had any experience with anyone in the military. He knew all this because of a realistic computer war game he spends too many hours playing. Just then, a loud voice blared out over the city's public address system. "Attention! Attention! This is Harold Yee, your mayor. I have just been informed by U.S. Air Force Space Command that the planet will soon come under attack. A fleet of 11 armored space stations is on its way to destroy the planet. This is not a joke. The battlecruiser Lincoln has been dispatched to counter them, and it has enough firepower to easily destroy them within a few minutes after they arrive. Unfortunately, it cannot get here for another 12 days, and the aliens are projected to get here in as little as 8 days. The entire explanation and evacuation plans are available on the municipal homepage. Do not delay. The city must be evacuated as soon as possible. Jake stood there, and it took a short time to process the information. I'm assuming this visit has something to do with that message. Your assumption is correct, Mr. Lee. Please call me Jake. And I'm Captain Campbell, or Fred, pleased to meet you. Jake wondered, how did you find me? Did you use facial recognition? This place must have cameras all over. No, I'm not aware of any citywide monitoring system. We just asked the staff of the company where you had just left. They can see you from their office balcony. Jake turned to find that the secluded private location where he carefully chose to sleep was right under the office of his former employers. In fact, 6 of them were currently standing on the balcony, staring at him. One of them waved. He timidly waved back. The captain explained, "There is a much more private spot under the small bridge in the center of the park. That is where I crashed out when I got too wasted to show up at the barracks drunk, back when I was a cadet. Please, we don't have much time. If you would please follow me, a bunch of VIPs are waiting." He led Jake to a waiting cart. The city had no roads, but the sidewalks were built very wide, which allowed for small automated carts. They were very expensive to rent, so most took the free trolley system to get around. They climbed in for the short ride to the central administration building, where Fred led him to the main conference room. Sitting around the large table were several men, women, and one alien dressed in casual attire. Obviously, no one had time to dress up. Jake recognized 2 of the people as General Richard Betancourt and Ambassador Squish from the CO system. The general was famous for his exploits and escape from Defiance, and the ambassador for his role in freeing the human slaves from the Groin Federation. Rick introduced himself, then to the group of generals, city officials, Squish, and some company representatives. Then Rick got to the point. Mr. Lee, as you know, this planet is under attack, and we have only one possible defense. A small company, Apex Aerospace, has been developing a small rocket-powered fighter. It is powered with a standard AAM rocket motor and armed with a small plasma pulse cannon. What makes it unique is that its airframe is constructed entirely of bluegrass polymer. It can be quickly and very cheaply produced, and it is light, strong, and heat-resistant. The initial test results exceeded expectations. They have constructed several prototypes, but have a problem. Jake interjected, "You can't make the software work, that's why I'm here." "You are correct," Rick answered. "I'll let you talk with Mr. Chi. He is the CEO of the company and knows more about this than I do." He stepped back and a very elderly Oriental man stepped up. His skin was overly wrinkled, his hair was thin and very gray, but his eyes were sharp, and he walked up with more grace one would expect from someone that old. "Call me Sal," he said, extending his hand. His grip was firm, and voice sounded younger than he looked. "As Rick said, we had completed the hardware, just started developing the software. We initially tried an AI-modified program of an existing program." "How long did it stay airborne?" Jake asked, not being sarcastic. "On our initial test flight, we launched it from a high-flying aircraft. It flew well for a while, then it would experience software issues, then recover, then eventually lost control and fell out of the sky. Fortunately, the test pilot survived without any injuries. The tail recovery rockets worked perfectly, and the ship let down relatively gently." Sal added, "We were in the process of contracting proper programmers." Jake looked at Rick and stated, "I work with systems that work to make them work better, not to fix the systems that don't work." Rick looked at Jake, and the general's demeanor changed. He developed an aura that was difficult to describe. It was a mixture of reality combined with authority. He explained in a clear and concise manner of a commander whose orders are not to be misunderstood or questioned. In war, we must work with the tools we have, not the tools we want. Jake took a deep breath and asked, "Where am I going to set up?" "We're going to work out of our command station in space. The rockets are prototypes and don't have landing gear and must be launched from space. Also, we assume that Millennia City will be first on their list since it has the largest population. But we don't know that. It will be easier to intercept them from space wherever they decide to attack, and it simplifies communications. We're leaving in about 2 hours. I'm in the process of rounding up some pilots, and we will leave as soon as they get here. I guess you're packed and ready to go, Rick surmised, looking at his suitcase and travel bag. Everyone assumed that Squish was going to return back to Co on his executive ship, and no one would blame him. That was his initial plan as well. He left the meeting and climbed into the cart. "Where to, Mr. Ambassador?" "Take me to the consulate." "Yes, sir," it responded, and smoothly accelerated away. As he was making his way through the city, he could not help but see that the normally leisurely pace of Millennia was shattered. People were rushing everywhere. He saw the worried look on everyone's faces and the uncertain fear in the eyes of the children. It affected him deeply. Years ago, one of his cargo crews stumbled upon an abandoned space station. They had shot it full of holes before they could haul it back to be recycled. And as part of the prospecting operation, they dropped a nuclear device on the surface to see if the crust was suitable for the formation mineral deposits. It was their normal operating procedure. But things were not what they appeared to be. The station was a human terminal and not abandoned, and there was a small city where they planted the bomb. They killed more than 150,000 humans. He managed to hide their crime. Now only a few know the truth. Oddly enough, that group includes Rick and his family, and a few trusted friends. He has always carried a guilt that he knows will never go away. "Agnes," he called out. "Yes, Squish. Call Melanie." Melanie was Rick's wife and chief financial officer of Millennia Corporation. Together they were the true power on the planet. "Yes, Squish, what can I do for you?" she answered. "Listen, my mind is made up and I want no argument." "What?" She was confused. "My lander and crew are parked at the space terminal. Find as many families as you can and squeeze as many as you can into it. I'm guessing about 40. Fly them up to my exec ship in orbit. Shuttle as many as you can, then FTL them to R3726. We have a large copper mine there. There is a large human farming colony nearby, so there is plenty of food. I've sent our manager a message, so she is waiting for you. It is about a 30-minute jump, and there is a small station in orbit that can shuttle them to the surface. Get as many as you can out of here as you can. I'm staying. Goodbye and good luck." Then he hung up. He did not give her a chance to respond because he knew she would try to talk him into evacuating. He thought, I'm getting old, and those children's lives are just beginning. There was this ever-present feeling that he owed humanity a debt that he could never repay. Besides, he thought to himself, I never run away from a fight. Up at the command station, Jake and the pilots arrived and disembarked from the lander. Rick met him in the classroom and advised, I've locked everyone out of your comm channel, except for me, the pilots, and Ambassador Squish. He is going to be your advisor, or co-pilot, as we say in the Air Force. Trust me, he is someone you want in your corner when things start looking ugly. If there is something you need to know, I'll pass it to you. Good luck, and don't panic. He had loaded the fighter's software on his computer just before they left the planet. He initiated his diagnostic program and waited. It was his secret weapon that he had written and modified over the years. When it displayed the results, his heart sank. What a mess, he thought. The AI they originally used failed to recognize that most of the hardware drivers were incompatible with the main motherboard. If the system had been used to run a factory conveyor belt, they would have worked well. But this was a fighter and needed much more precision. Unfortunately, the correct drivers didn't exist, which meant he had to write new ones or develop emulators. This was not difficult, but time-consuming. And this was just a beginning. There were so many faults on the screen that he got scared. This is going to take days he doesn't have. He was prepared to work night and day, and maybe he could get something that just runs. An airman would occasionally bring him coffee and sandwiches. Back at the consulate, Squish sat at his desk wondering what to do next. Rick told him that he was going to be Jake's advisor, but he didn't know exactly what that meant. Agnes, use the diplomatic channel to contact Jake up at the command station. Yes, Squish, connecting. Jake's voice came on. Yes, Ambassador? Jake, if we are going to communicate efficiently, you're going to have to start calling me Squish. Okay, Squish, what can I do for you? I'm here in my room going crazy. Could you use some help with anything? Before I signed on with Co-Metals, I was an industrial data flow analyst for several years. Jake answered, Squish, do you know how to construct emulation routines? Yes, I do. Great. The driver for the throttle and the control routine need to get on the same page. See if you can do something with them. I'm sending them to you now. Incoming code, Agnes announced. Squish started on the problem, and 40 minutes later he had a working system. This is going to take forever, he thought to himself. Sometimes when he's desperate or bored, he asks Agnes impossible questions. Agnes, yes, Squish? What would be the quickest way to get a bunch of incompatible drivers and programs to work together efficiently? The most efficient method of combining different types of software into a workable program is to utilize an AI program named Jupiter. Jupiter is an application designed to increase software efficiency and troubleshoot faults. I must warn you, to possess Jupiter or any part of Jupiter is highly illegal in all developed and partially developed planets. In 6 systems, the minimum sentence for possession is life in prison. It can defeat 100% of all known security software. It was written by Abel Smith, who died in a Nigerian jail under mysterious circumstances. There is currently a team of top interplanetary law enforcement officers whose only function is finding Jupiter. Great, I guess we can't download it from Amazon, he muttered sarcastically. It is not available on the open market, Agnes explained, but we do have the latest version with all the latest features and upgrades in my expansion slot. Do you wish me to install it? Squish was shocked and almost fell out of his chair. What? He yelled. University of Chicago Medical Center, where did you get such a thing, and why did you load it into my computer? He shouted. Agnes responded, The technicians installed Jupiter with the other AI chips in my expansion slots. It was listed on the installation manifest. Squish thought long and hard, then asked, Agnes, yes, Squish? Get me Jake. Squish had to think carefully about what he was going to do. Yes, Squish. Are you done with the emulation? He had just met Jake and was about to reveal information that could land him in prison. But he had to take the risk. The stakes were too high. Squish had to force the words out of his mouth. Jake, can you use Jupiter? A long silence followed. Jake responded, Yes, maybe, if I don't disappear in a third-world jail or hide for the rest of my life. Then Squish instructed, Log your terminal into my AI and see what it can do. This is a secure diplomatic line and it's safe. I know there is a distracting question that will haunt you all through this ordeal if I don't address it. How did I end up with Jupiter? And the simple answer is, I have no idea. I asked my AI what was the best way to tackle this problem, and this is what it came up with. That's weird, Jake replied. Jake connected his terminal to Squish's and went to work. He installed Jupiter's front end and initiated it. A silly musical jingle played, followed by a string of pathetic, colorful, grainy, animated letters that danced toward the center of the monitor as a cheap, annoying female voice announced, Welcome to Jupiter version 17.3. What can Jupiter do for you today? It sang out. Jake stared at the monitor and wondered out loud, This is the most dangerous software ever created? He was a top programmer but not an aeronautical engineer. He could tell from the prompt page that Jupiter was not for beginners. It required extensive knowledge of the program you want it to fix in order for Jupiter to work on it. He didn't know how the fighter's software was programmed. His shoulders drooped and he covered his eyes. Then, Jupiter is useless, he thought. His head popped up. Then he declared, I don't know that program, but I sure know my code. He instructed Jupiter to load his diagnostic and repair program. It performed a preliminary scan, then it asked him many questions and for specific parameters. He long ago had become intimate with his software, for he wrote or modified most of it. Jake quickly gave Jupiter everything it needed. Finally, the text prompt appeared. To initiate optimization, press Enter. He took a deep breath, then pressed the Enter key. The music and annoying voice returned and proclaimed, Thank you, Jupiter is now working on your request. Estimated time until completion, 8 minutes. It was done in 2. The voice then sang out, Task completed. Complete summary listed in your results folder. The screen cleared. and "Thank you for using Jupiter" bounced across the monitor, repeated by the obnoxious voice. He opened his newly modified diagnostic program and loaded the ship's software. The main page was the normal screen, as he had grown accustomed to for years. Nothing changed in appearance. All the same functions were in the same location on the screen, and all the controls had not changed. The first indication that something was different was that the initial scan took 2 seconds to complete, instead of 20 minutes or more. The standard fault diagram appeared, and it was filled with errors. He worked on each routine individually. The diagnostic routines, reconfigurations, and processes that normally took many hours were completed in seconds, and repairs that always required more input or just didn't work were instantaneously completed, without issue. He entered the final entries and leaned back. The screen went black, and in 5 minutes it reported, "Reprogramming complete, final results listed below." Jake's eyes widened as he went down the list. 21 hardware drivers reconfigured and maximized for speed and efficiency. Machine loop sequence potential 0%. Read-write errors 0. Lag efficiency 100%. Choke points 0. Conflicting commands 0. Data path efficiency 100%. IRQ signal precedence optimized. All the numbers were perfect. Jake was shocked, to say the least. He now realized how Jupiter had both a tremendous potential for good and destruction. On one hand, it could create software that could solve many of civilization's most pressing problems. On the other, in a few minutes, it could make an unstoppable virus that could bring down all advanced civilizations. "I wonder who's going to make the hard choices," he wondered. Then his heart pounded again as he thought about his improved diagnostic program. "This should make my life easier," he thought with his heart still racing. He called out on the comm, "Squish, it's finished, and I've never seen such tight code. This is amazing. Even with an army of top programmers and years to do the job, it would not be possible to get this level of efficiency. But we won't know if it will work for sure until we try it." "That's amazing. Are you going to schedule the flight trials now?" Squish asked. "I've got to talk with Rick and Fred first. Keep you posted." They met him in the classroom. As they were walking in, Rick asked, "Is it ready?" Jake paused to gather his thoughts, then explained, "I've made sure that all the hardware can communicate and that the main software doesn't have any obvious glitches. I have no way to test the main program to see if it actually works. The only way to find out is to fly it." Fred's eyes widened as he realized that he was going to be the test pilot. His excitement was obvious. "Calm down, hotshot. You first have to learn how to fly it," Jake told him. "You two have work to do. Call if you need something," Rick said as he walked out. Jake fired up the simulation app, and they both put on the helmet and sat down at the table. The ship had no built-in controllers, buttons, switches, or displays, only a false screen projected by the visor on the head mask, and 2 controllers, one for each hand. Jake handed him the helmet and gloves. "Put these on, and I'll show you how it works." The control layout was the standard fighter configuration. Jake had mastered it on a flight war game he wasted far too much time playing. They sat down and put on the gear, and Jake linked the 2 systems together. Fred's screen came on, and he was virtually transported to the cockpit of a rocket fighter, and he started flying. They were practicing some basic maneuvers when a robotic voice came through Fred's intercom. "Attention, your left wing has been grazed by a plasma pulse. No significant damage." "What the heck?" Fred commented in confusion. "I've put it in game mode," Jake explained. "Loser buys the beer when this is all over." They played for a while, laughing and bantering. When the game was over, they took off the helmets and removed their gloves. Jake taunted, "I win, fighter pilot, 10-7. "You just got lucky, gamer," Fred retorted. When they looked up, they were surprised to see a room full of pilots standing, staring at them. Sip, the senior pilot, stood there with a very serious glare on his face and his arms crossed. Jake stood up and stretched his back and arms. "My name is Jake Lee. I'm your instructor. I've managed to repair the software that drive the rocket planes you're going to fly into combat. This is more than a game. It is a realistic simulator that functions like the real thing. Its software also monitors your performance and provides feedback. I'm thinking of scheduling an hour of play after each day's session." After a long pause, Sip looked around and stated, "Actually, that's what I thought. Of course, it was obvious, another stated. What else could it be? Another pilot chimed in. What a good idea, the confirmation continued. They then sat at the table, and the day's lesson began. First the general orientation, then simulator time, then more simulator time. The pace was relentless. The military culture Jake found himself in was not what he expected. Before this, he held the impression of officers barking orders and rigid soldiers obeying commands while standing at attention. Instead, he watched as the group develop a sense of almost family, and the "we will do it or die" attitude emerged. As they worked together, Jake, Fred, and Sip developed a close friendship. They worked on constructing a set of tactical maneuvers, or plays as they called them. Fred's test flight went without any significant problem other than it was too much fun. One morning, Jake stood up and announced, "The stations will arrive in a few days, so today we fly the real things. Ready or not, here we come." Keep in mind that those ships have never been flight tested, so this might be more fun than we anticipated. The class engaged in a rousing cheer, then stormed out into the cargo bay. The flight crews had already prepared the rocket ships for takeoff and were standing by to help the pilots climb into their fighters. Over the intercom, Jake explained, "You are performing a standard re-entry and heading to a vast empty desert, where there are massive rocks that will serve as targets." The class performed surprisingly well. Although they initially had some trouble flying in formation and adapting to G-forces, they quickly got proficient. The flight schedule was grueling and put a severe strain on their bodies. Jake saw this and scheduled an 8-hour sleep break. This disturbed some at command who thought they should keep training, but Rick interceded. Jake could care less what command thought. What are they going to do? Fire me? That morning the class gathered, but Jake didn't show. They waited a while, then Sid got up and said, "Jake gets less sleep than any of us, it must have caught up with him," and went to see if their instructor slept in. He reached the door and almost bumped into Jake. "Sorry I'm late, but I've been talking with command," Jake explained. "The first battle station has dropped out of FTL. It entered the atmosphere and dropped to a valley about 120 kilometers from the city. Apparently, that's where they'd chosen their staging area. Get your gear ready. I've loaded the mission profile on your ships and we're going down now." The room scramble and rushed to the cargo bay. Down on the surface, a father and his 2 young children were camping in a beautiful, serene countryside near a crystal-clear stream. He was thinking of how fortunate they were to be here. They had just set up their campsite when they received the order to evacuate the city on their phone. They were camping out in the country and all they had to do was stay put. But since they were only planning to stay a couple days, they were running out of supplies. His brother volunteered to dash into the city and pick up additional stock. He had just called and was on his way back. The planet had no paved roads, and everyone traveled by train when visiting the other cities. Only a network of dirt roads connected a series of communication outposts and a few campgrounds. The small van they rented, one of the few vehicles on the planet, was not ideally suited for the unpaved paths, and you had to be careful not to get stuck. His daughter was playing with the sand on the bank of the stream, and the older son was wading in the unnaturally warm water. While admiring the beautiful mountainous scenery, his daughter pointed, "Look, Dad, a flying saucer!" He looked up and his heart almost stopped. He instantly recognized what it was because it could only be one thing, the alien battle station that everyone was warned about. He yelled out, "Kids, find your pants and jackets and put on your boots." They were camping on an exposed, large, flat section of the valley. He picked up his phone and called his brother. "Yes, Dave. Mike, how far are you?" "About half-hour away. Why?" "One of the alien ships they told us is coming to attack us has appeared across the valley, and it looks like it might be headed toward us." Mike answered, "Hold on. I'll get there as fast as I can. Speed up, but be careful. It's not going to help us if you get stuck somewhere. I'll be careful." The grass was too difficult to walk on, especially for small children, and the mountains were very far away, so their only option is to follow the dirt trail back the way they came. The ship was quickly getting larger, and he hoped it would just fly over. It didn't. The battle station wasted no time and started firing its powerful pulse plasma cannon into targets beneath it. Its first target was the comm center. The ship fired 3 pulses at it. The second 2 were unnecessary because the first obliterated it. They just rearranged the rubble. He knew that the buildings were probably unoccupied because there were no vehicles parked outside. The intense heat of the pulses ignited several forest fires. It turned its attention to a herd of peaceful, deer-like grazers that it scared into stampeding. There was nothing but ashes where they had been running. Mike picked up his daughter onto his back and then turned to run up the trail. He hoped it would be content to stay where it was floating, but it continued moving in their direction. "Great, our lucky day," he muttered. His daughter started to cry, and he tried to console her. "Don't worry, baby, your Uncle Mike will be here soon and take us away." It didn't help much. The ship was looming closer, and they could feel the heat from the random blasts. His eyes filled with tears, making it difficult to see where he was running. "This doesn't look promising," he whispered to himself between gasps. It was early in the morning and the sun was still low. The ship was still moving toward them and cast its giant shadow over them. Everything went suddenly dark. At the same instant, a blast landed nearby. They could feel the searing heat and the thunderous explosion through their feet. The fear overwhelmed them. Both kids started crying out loud. He closed his eyes, waiting for it to catch up. "God, if you're up there, you're our only hope." Then God answered with a loud, strange, shrieking noise, and it wasn't coming from the station. It came from the mountains in the north. He wiped his eyes with his forearm and squinted them toward the sound. He could barely make out a group of blue dots against the mountains. They approached quickly, and the noise grew louder. "Those are rocket planes," he exclaimed. At first he assumed they were alien ships, coming back to their mothership. But when he saw their small, bright white plasma pulses shooting at the station, he thought, someone is fighting back. The tiny ship's blasts were puny compared to the station's cannons, but they were getting its attention. Not only did it slow down, the plasma cannons on the bottom of the ship ceased firing, as the cannons on its top surface opened up at the attacking fighters. Apparently, it does not have enough power to fire all guns at the same time, he thought to himself. "What are those, Daddy?" the little girl questioned. "Honey, those are our guys. They came to save us." The kids began cheering. His phone rang. Space Command was calling. "Mr. Daniels?" A voice spoke out. "Yes," he answered. "This is Captain Campbell, U.S. Air Force. We're flying in. Your brother called the police, and they contacted us. Keep walking the way you are going. Your brother is about 10 minutes out. We can see him. We'll try to hold it off. Good luck." Mike had never been to church in his life and never thought much about religion. But for some reason he said, "Bless you, you saved my family," then hung up, for they had more important work to do than talk to him. "We're going to be okay, kids. Let's keep moving." Looking back at the station, he saw the fighters were attacking it, like a swarm of angry blue bees. They were easily dodging the powerful but slow plasma pulses from the station. It had completely come to a halt and was busy fighting off the attackers. The rocket ship's small cannons didn't seem to do much, but he did see that small sections of the skin of the ship were occasionally being blown off. Fires started where the debris landed on the surface. Soon his brother appeared, and they scrambled into the van. As they turned around, Dave looked at his children huddling in the back seat, as if that was going to make them safer. He looked back one more time at the ongoing battle and saw that 2 more battle stations had arrived. They've got their work cut out for them, he thought to himself. Back at the consulate, Squish sat in his room, taking turns staring at the video feed from Fred's fighter, listening to Jake's commands, and looking out his window. He could see the station's plasma pulses on the horizon. They resembled the fireworks he remembered from when he visited Disneyland. The consulate was built on the edge of Millennia, where the stations will probably first attack the city. The danger didn't concern Squish. If he could save one child, then it was worth it. It was frustrating that the battle was going nowhere. The tiny fighters were striking the huge station at will, but nothing was happening. Pieces of its outer skin were falling off, but it didn't seem to matter. The ship kept flying and fighting regardless. Then it got worse. Another station dropped out of FTL and was entering the atmosphere. Soon 2 showed up, and the rest followed behind. Squish was fighting the despair. Up to now, all the fighters had been ganging up on one station and haven't done much damage. What are they going to do against 11? Jake split up the group and they continued the fight. Once all the stations arrived, the formation began moving toward the city. Squish could see the flashes getting brighter, and some deep rumbling was audible. On one attack run, Fred and Sip were weaving their ships through a narrow canyon, hoping to get close enough to do more damage. The plasma pulse lost energy with distance, so they were attempting a closer shot. They were nearing the mouth of the canyon when the station blasted a pulse in his direction. As usual, it was off target. Its shot was high, but it managed to hit an outcropping of rocks on the wall of the canyon in front and above them. The explosion sent a wall of boulders falling down in their path. He easily made it out, but Sip behind him wasn't so lucky. He disappeared in a cloud of dust. Fred's heart sank. "Sip," he whispered sadly. He knew that he could not let the loss of a friend distract him. The battle was still raging. He must fight on. Squish was getting frustrated. Everything Jake tried worked better, but didn't work. He could see the stations clearly across the field and could make out the fighters, and it was only a matter of minutes before they started demolishing the city. As he was staring out his window, a stray plasma pulse landed a short distance away. Its intense heat caused a large explosion, and it shook the building. He felt the blast, and it shook him. Sitting near the window, he concentrated and felt more than knew that there was an answer. He could smell it. Agnes. Yes, Squish. Take everything anyone knows about those stations, analyze all the video we've made, and see if you can determine a critical component that would knock those things out of the sky. Find a way to destroy it. Working. Almost immediately, she came back. All the stations are identical, and I have made a composite of all the damage they have sustained. A three-dimensional figure of the station appeared in front of him, with much of the interior exposed. Agnes combined all the holes on every station into one picture. I have traced the power cable network to a main MAM power source. It would require the simultaneous of 4 plasma pulse strikes on this panel to expose it. The energy of plasma pulse strikes is cumulative. The temperature on a target that had been struck with 4 simultaneous plasma pulse hits will be almost 4 times hotter than a single strike. The ultra-intense heat will cause the metal to explode. Subsequent strikes will destroy the exposed power supply. Unfortunately, none of the pilots have had the training and skill required to accomplish the maneuver. The chance of success with the current pilots is 3%. The casualty rate is between 22 and 34% since it requires the fighters to get well within the station's targeting range. Squish was disappointed, but he had a hunch. "Jake," he called out. "Yes, Squish, Agnes came up with a plan, but you're not going to like it." Jake thought for a moment and explained, "I haven't liked any of the plans we've tried so far." Jake took a moment to examine Agnes's proposal, then exclaimed, "You're wrong, Ambassador. I love this plan. In fact, I'm excited about this plan." Agnes might have just provided the answer we need. Jake furiously made some modifications to one of his current plays. "Everybody, I've modified the mirror strike play, so the pulses hit at the exact same time. We're going to hit it with 5 simultaneous blasts instead of 4. That will let us shoot from further away, out of its effective range. I've selected the targets. Just follow your designated path and guide cursor exactly. Your cannon's fire control system has been linked and will fire automatically." The play worked. The convergent pulses blew a hole over the power unit, green sparks flew out, and the subsequent strikes caused a massive explosion inside the ship. The station ceased firing, tilted, then slowly dropped out of the sky. There was no explosion when it crashed on the surface, just a huge cloud of dust. It took a few minutes, and the battle was over. They loitered over the valley, surveying the damage. They hadn't realized how close the stations got to the city. Up at the station, Jake ordered, "Okay, time to come home." Fred then requested, "The guys want to make a flyover over the city." Jake agreed, "Good idea, but this is still the Air Force. Get in proper formation." "Yes, sir. You heard the commander. Form up in triangular echelon and follow my lead." The city was mostly indoors, but most of the inhabitants had left the city and were wandering in the fields nearby. There was simply nowhere to hide. They would have been slaughtered had the stations not been stopped. The news of the victory spread like wildfire, and when the fighters flew over the crowds, the people jumped, cheered, and waved as they went by. They flew slow and low enough so they could see them celebrating. The formation spiraled around the city, then pointed their noses up and flew back to the station. Jake watched on his monitor as the ships floated into the main bay. The large hatch closed, and it slowly pressurized the hangar. The pilots could tell when it was safe to get out because the ship's crew stormed in. They opened the canopies and had to lift most of the pilots out of their cockpits. The stress of jet combat on their bodies left them weak. They had to help them walk, for their legs were very wobbly. Jake was waiting by the classroom door and motioned to get everyone inside. "General Betancourt wants a word with all of us," he said as they were wobbling through the door. The chairs and tables were in the same disordered state as they left them. They all took their customary seats, except for one chair. A pair of glasses, baseball cap, and notebook were still on the table, waiting for their owner. The room went silent. Jake stood in front of the table, at a loss at what to say. Rick was sitting at a desk, with his phone on the table. He spoke out. "Before anyone says anything, I've got someone on the line that wants to talk to you." He picked up his phone and said, "They're all here." A familiar voice came out from the classroom speakers. "Jake, Fred, can you hear me?" The room broke out in cheers. Fred called out, "Sip, is it you?" "How?" "Yep, it's me, pretty much in one piece." "I saw you get blown up when you hit the rocks," Fred exclaimed. "That bluegrass polymer the hull is made of is tough stuff and held together." "I sure got bounced around, though," Sip explained. "I woke up in the hospital with a few broken ribs, several hairline fractures in my spine, and a headache from hell. They tell me I'll recover, but I'm still under observation for concussion." "Jake, are you there?" he called out. "I'm here, Sip." "It's so good to hear you're okay. Listen, I spent 37 years in the war business and fought in 2.5 wars. I want to congratulate you and your team. Honestly, I've seen experienced officers panic in far less stressful situations. You accomplished the main goal of every commander has had since organized military was invented. You accomplished your mission and brought your team back home, alive and kicking, and on your very first try. Again, great job, all of you, and see you soon." As soon as the planet's population returned from hiding, they held a massive celebration. They filled the largest sports stadium to capacity, and everyone else watched from parks on large screens. The governor gave a boring speech, bands played, and everyone received medals, including Squish, who wanted to remain anonymous. Then everyone went back to their normal routine. Jake, the pilots, Squish, and some dignitaries were invited to a party at Rick's apartment. Squish and Jake found themselves alone on the balcony that overlooked the countryside. Jake looked out into the valley below, and the view took his breath away. It was dusk, and the unnaturally bright and beautiful bioluminescent foliage below was shining at its peak. The neon blue and violet glow of the plants, along with the matching city lights, was a reminder that he was not on Earth. Squish looked around and made sure no one else was listening. "Jake, how do you think I ended up with Jupiter?" I asked Agnes, and she didn't find much information. All she could find was that when Discovery Semiconductors started reproducing Abel Smith's program, they weren't aware of its capability. When they found out, they launched a recall and managed to recover all the chips they sold except one. The rest of what I managed to find is rumors and unsubstantiated conspiracy theories. Jake smiled and recounted, "Among us in the programmer community have heard a more complete account. That story is true. They did get all the chips back but one, but a friend of a friend who knows someone that works in the company told of a more complete story. He said that a technician named Henry, that worked there in quality control, managed to steal a chip. He took it from the transit receiving shelf before the shipping clerk had a chance to scan it into the system. A company security camera got very lucky and recorded him just at the right angle. Unknown to Henry, the authorities were tracking the package from the production factory and were waiting in the receiving dock for the package to arrive. They were hanging around the dock for the message indicating that it had been scanned in by receiving so they could go pick it up. Henry got to it first. When they finally found out that the delivery truck had come and gone and no package, they initiated a search. They eventually got down to reviewing the security video of the loading dock. Henry had already left for his home in the suburbs of Chicago when they saw him snatch it from the receiving shelf. They dispatched a SWAT team to chase him down. He shot himself just as the police were closing in. They never found the chip. "Chicago, that's where I had Agnes implanted," Squish explained. Jake's eyes widened and shouted, "That's it! Why Henry, that little genius?" Agnes is a powerful high-end computer that can combine the resources of multiple AI chips. Discovery manufactured some of the AI chips that were to be installed on Agnes, and the rest came from other companies. The UCMC hospital cleanroom team were the ones who installed the chips. He used his position in quality control to have the surgeons add Jupiter in one of Agnes's extra expansion slots. And as the QC tech, Henry had access to the system configuration document, which he could easily doctor along with the shipping manifest. He didn't even have to take Jupiter out from its secure area. He probably put it in a routine internal office distribution container, and it eventually got shipped out with the other chips. Jupiter ended up in U because of two logical but incorrect conclusions. The police assumed he put the chip in his pocket and snuck it out, and Henry assumed the technicians in the clean room where the chips were being installed noticed the extra chip and alerted the authorities. Since it was part of his normal daily routine to retrieve packages from the receiving dock, it never occurred to him that it was where they caught him. I'm sure he expected when they eventually discovered it was missing, they would conclude that the chip was stolen somewhere in transit, and there would be nothing that would lead anyone to suspect him over anyone else. Squish asked, how was he going to get Jupiter back? Was he planning to kill me and cut it out later? No, this is the genius part of his plan. Every high-capacity chip comes with its own CPU and a small amount of RAM that contains the installation routines and hardware driver. This is so the host computer can communicate with it. Squish caught on and said, he installed a back door. Correct, Jake confirmed. He most certainly used the burner on his desk to load it into Jupiter. That way he could access Jupiter from anywhere, without you or Agnes being aware. You would have been the perfect mule. You're a top-level diplomat and are exempt from security scans by interplanetary agreement. That's why no one has ever detected it. Installing Jupiter on any other computer would be difficult to hide and very risky. He also knew that you would always have access to the fastest, most powerful FTL servers on the interplanetary network. Squish took a moment, then asked, how can I get rid of it? I don't want anyone to know I have it. If I report this to the authorities now, I'll be under suspicion for the rest of my life. Jake explained, it's a hardwired program and cannot be deleted or destroyed using Agnes. And if you just have it surgically removed, it will certainly be discovered, and I wouldn't recommend finding a black market doctor somewhere. You're a celebrity, and it would be dangerous. Squish was frustrated. Then what do I do? Just have Agnes uninstall it, delete the driver, clear all of its RAM, and remove it from the hardware registry. It will become invisible to any scan, and only Agnes will have the capability to reinstall it, and if someone tries some super sophisticated program to find it, Agnes's advanced firewall will easily detect and block it. That's the best option you have, Jake concluded. Squish thought a moment and stated, so I just have to take it to my grave, and took a moment to reflect. Well, when are you headed home? He asked, changing the subject. Jake took a deep breath and admitted, Melanie offered me a position in Millennia Corp's IT division, and I've already accepted. Turns out Fred is in the National Guard, and his normal job is a bartender at the Rocket Inn, and says he can hook me up with some girls he knows. Besides, Millennia has a way of growing on you. It does, Squish agreed. That's why I like coming back here whenever I can. Squish smiled mischievously and revealed, and that diagnostic program you had Jupiter put together should really help you with your work. Jake looked at Squish with a surprised face, for he was sure no one knew what he did. You forgot that you had mirrored your screen on my monitor. I watched you do it, Squish explained. Jake was caught in his embarrassment, and his mind scrambled for something to say. I guess I'm busted, he finally replied. Then they both laughed hysterically. This story is a part of a series of 4 related videos. The links are listed in the description. The narrative actually begins in a novel I wrote titled Mini and Kaka, and it is available on Amazon Kindle if you are interested in the complete story. Please like and subscribe and help me get my channel off the ground. That's if you like my work.